writes things like this? Who's this guy? Why is he here? So we're just cutting to here now. Why not? I didn't think you could get any stupider, but here we are. They couldn't even write the animals well. How does that make any sense? How could he be there now? Like this?
No, just take the top off
This
how
is
people
just
act.
What the fuck did I just watch? Hey, welcome to another episode of What the Fuck Did I Just Watch? I'm your host, Martin, also known as Some Jerk. With me today is Dennis.
Hey, folks.
Wonderful. We also have my brother, PT.
Hi, everybody, again.
And we have another Paul with us today. For the sake of confusion, I'm going to call him Mr. Moore. Hello, Mr. Moore.
Hello. For the sake of confusion, you should just call us both Paul.
For the sake of confusion, you can go fuck yourself.
Hmm.
So, as everyone knows, this is the podcast where I find the weirdest and worst movies out there and force other people to watch them. And today, we have something great. But before we get into that, why don't we find out a little bit more about the kind of movies that Dennis and Mr. Moore actually watch? Because I don't know if they are into bad movies the way my brother and I are. So, we'll start with Dennis. Dennis, what kind of movies do you watch in general?
In general, I like comedies. Trying to think of the last movie that I saw in theaters, but overall, just kind of like the Judd Apatow type of sensibility. But I definitely like the Resident Evil movies for the sake of watching bad movies. Those are great.
All right, anything worse than Resident Evil, or is that the pinnacle of what you consider bad movies to be?
It's hard because I haven't really watched a movie just for the sake of laughing at it. Battle Royale kind of straddles that line. I mean, it's a great movie, but it's also, the part where the teacher gets up after he should be dead.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that.
It's great for how campy it is.
I really want to disagree with you because I love that movie, but after watching a midnight matinee of it, holy shit, that movie has so many cheesy parts, it's amazing. What's the weirdest movie you've seen?
A movie called Ink. And in fairness, I was on a date at the time, so it definitely kind of compromised my experience of it, but it was just really strange. The twist spoiler alert, the twist at the end of the father being Ink the whole time and saving the daughter is just really, really odd.
Did that fuck up the date at all? Or did he just be like, hey, you find that confusing?
I was shown the movie because, she wanted me to relax, and that is not a relaxing movie. You don't really watch that. It's not romantic. It's not, settling. It's just very bizarre. There's a lot of just very odd parts to it, and portals and bongos and lots of things happening.
Did she try to calm you down with a hand job or something?
Sure did.
All right, well.
Okay, then.
Well, a movie well seen. All right, let's move on to Mr. Moore. Mr. Moore, what is the worst movie you think you've seen?
Oh, I don't... Off the top of my head, I don't go out to see bad movies. So, I've seen Mongo's The Hands... I like to call them Mongo's The Hands of Fruit, the classic movie. That's one of the worst. But I tend not to go out of my way.
Fate,
yes.
Of The Hands of Fate.
No, it's really Mango's The Hands of Fruit. And
Love that.
Sure, why not?
Yeah, and I don't go out of my way, though, to see bad movies. That was just one of them that I just happen to... it's probably the worst I've seen, though.
Now,
or The Room. Did
you see the Mystery Science Theater 3000 version, or did
yes.
you actually... Okay, so you didn't actually accidentally, pop in
on
The Hands of Fate.
Guys.
Yeah, I didn't that looks like a great film. I should go watch that in the theaters. No, I didn't subject myself to that.
Well, we didn't find you in a room hanging by a rope from your neck, so I guess you didn't see it.
Well, speaking of The Room, I believe you did say that you saw The Room. Did you see all of The Room, Paul?
Again, this was in review form, much like MST3K. Thank God. Otherwise, I'd David Carradine in this shit.
Man, at least you jerk off to it. But yeah, what would you consider to be weird? Have you ever just walked into a weird movie that you didn't expect to take the turns that it did?
Generally, no. I tend to know what I'm going into, when I see a movie. I tend to know what to expect. Although I did like Dread, for instance, and you could kind of guess the ending, but I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying that I really loved the ending of Dread, the latest one.
I think you said that weird. I thought that was a good movie. That was an honestly good movie.
Well, that's the thing. Like, it was a great movie, except for the fact that it had sort of been spoiled for me. Like, I couldn't have seen that ending coming. I was just like, wow, that's awesome. So, like, I generally know, though, going into a movie.
So today's movie is Karate-Robo Zabogar. Zabogar. It's spelled Z-A-R-B-O-G.
Zabogar.
Zabogar. Why don't we watch the trailer and see what the hell this shit's about? Here we go. And we're back. I should mention right off the bat that in the previous section, I did get confused about what the title of the movie was, and that was because it actually goes by several names, and I thought I was fucking retarded when I got off the air last time. I was thinking, shit, what's it called? Karate-Robo Zabogar? Did I just read it wrong? But no. Depending on where you look it up, whether it's IMDb, Netflix, or even just a goddamn Google search, you can get different things, different spellings, whether it's robo or robot. If you go into IMDb, it says Karate-Robo Zabogar, but you can't find it by typing in Karate-Robo Zabogar. You have to put in Diamond Zabogar.
Say Diamond?
Diamond.
Yeah.
So,
And just to pile onto that, if you were to try to look this up on Wikipedia, the movie is based on the original Japanese TV show Denjin Zabogar, so that'll help you find it a little easier.
actually, what's even messed up about that is it's not Zabogar, it's Zabogar. ER. So at least I feel like less of a moron, but I guess you could probably say I'm still a moron.
Yeah, it's pretty safe.
Yep.
But...
Fuck you. All right, but first, maybe you guys can explain this movie. If you were to write the Netflix description, like if you only had a line or two, how would you describe the plot? Dennis.
Fighting robot vigilante karate man saves Japan from evil villain who wants to steal everyone's essence to build the ultimate female robot destruction machine.
I think that's actually more concise than what's actually on Netflix.
Yeah, that's not the movie I saw.
Well, Paul, how would you describe the movie?
Well, how do you describe a closet filled with a bunch of shit that's been stuffed full of, all your stuff instead of, actually cleaning your room? That's this movie. That's just a bunch of shit in your closet. That's what this movie is. And if you open the closet, it'll spill out.
All right, how about you, Mr. Moore?
This is... Imagine an adult Power Ranger is fighting for righteousness against the forces of ...
Okay. So how did this movie live up to what you guys thought of it? We'll start with you again, Dennis.
Sure. This honestly exceeded expectations. It has, I want to say, 3 stars on Netflix, or at least it did when I was watching it. So
Really?
I mean,
This shit had
pretty much
3 stars for you on Netflix? It was like one and a half for
I'm
me.
pretty sure I contributed to it going lower than 3 stars.
Well, be that as it may. No,
I
that's
brought
what
it
I
up.
saw. So I was kind of expecting, something kind of below average. But I mean, like you said earlier, you suspend a lot of disbelief to have fun with this, and once you do, it's a great time. I would have given it, 3-4 stars. So, very happy with it.
And what about you, Paul?
I just don't like movies that resemble anime, and I actually thought it was an anime at first. Well, I mean, like the original story, but I don't know. It really got boring.
So, Mr. Moore, what about you? How did this live up to your expectations?
Oh, it met them and more. I love this movie. I mean, as much as Paul hated it, I loved it. The effects were so cheesy and goofy, but it felt so nostalgic, like watching this movie. It is an adult Power Rangers.
To add on to what Mr. Moore is saying here, it's if you isolated one of the Power Rangers and explored his backstory, and if his backstory was that he had a twin brother who died when he was a baby because his mother died, and his father tried to breastfeed him to health.
Yeah.
That's what I laughed at. I guess that stuff was supposed to be funny, but
Well, no, he just
dead babies are funny.
so.
well, maybe the Japanese think they're funnier than we do.
Well, no, it turns out that he didn't die from breastfeeding is the worst part, though. He died because the father was too busy with research that he couldn't take care of them.
Oh, right,
and
he
the kid died.
neglected it.
Yes, he
Yep, he
neglected
died
him
from
to death.
neglect.
But he didn't
Yep.
neglect the other kid? That doesn't
No.
make sense. What?
Well, he was stronger, clearly, and
Oh, clearly.
his breast milk was enough.
But you know what? I got a few questions for you guys. So we all have our own thoughts about the movie, and we should just sit down and why don't I put on my little interviewing cap and why don't we just have like a discussion based on the 10 items that I just thought up at work today.
It's a really good name for this segment.
Yeah.
Yep. I call it Karate-Robo Zabogar Interview with People. Again, with the clever names. Everyone knows that Part 1 and Part 2 are two separate entities. But there's something very specific that popped out in Part 1. What did the floating castle look like to you guys?
It really looked exactly like a floating nutsack.
That's what I thought too, and I know Paul Moore is eventually going to disagree because he has a very specific thing that he saw. But when that thing first appeared, that was totally a nutsack with like a samurai helmet on it.
See,
There was more to it than just that.
See, I get that, but it looks like an ass, and I say it because it had an asshole. It actually expelled things from the asshole and absorbed
I
things.
think it's
weirdly
both.
enough.
I think it's both. Because you're right, Paul. It did that, and there's no doubt about it. That was an asshole with a light beam coming out of it. They're kidnapping people, by the way.
Yes, exactly. It was.
But it was definitely there was bulbs on two sides of it. So what if it has two nutsacks? It has two nutsacks and an asshole.
Could this
That's what
be
this fucking
the
thing
long
has.
forgotten Jin of fucking Japanese lore, which is two nutsacks with an asshole goat-seeing people into the earth? That floating castle, as when it comes to the flashback, where it describes where Zabogar came, well, not Zabogar, Diamond, I guess, and the death of the father, that was just the first part of that scene.
Yep.
And that set the stage for the rest of that scene. Do you guys remember how that fucking thing went?
If we could just break that down, because there's a lot of just rich little nuggets that are happening in what you're talking about, because it's the origin story of Daimon, where he becomes like a karate master, and eventually has to use it because his father's been kidnapped.
Oh, by the way, karate master because he wins a black belt at a karate tournament.
Oh,
Whatever.
yes, and yeah. Would
But
anyone else
that's not how
care?
you win black belts. I didn't.
No, you win them.
I
Apparently.
thought it was like out of like a Cracker Jack box.
It's usually a raffle.
Oh, okay.
Well, first, before we get into that, let's just clear this up. Castle Asshole Nutsack is how far in the sky?
50 stories high.
It's that far.
Oh yeah, no, high enough that if, say, your father had been kidnapped by some very sweaty, bald, chubby gentleman, say if one had a drill for a hand, and they decided to, say, torture him by not drilling a hole in him, but just lightly rubbing against where his nipples are, while he's kinda into it.
No, they humiliate.
Oh, that totally humiliated. He's an old Japanese gentleman with a mustache and gray hair and no shirt and very thin.
The fact
Japanese are very famous for their tickle tortures.
Here's one big kicker to right before the father takes extreme measures to get away. So Daimon has won his black belt in the tournament. His buddy taps him on the shoulder and goes, "Hey, isn't that your father? The castle is 50 stories in the air. No one could hear or see what is happening.
Do not underestimate the power of the Japanese to sense humiliation.
I believe that very much. That no truer word has been
They
said.
definitely have a good eagle eye.
Yeah.
And
Paul,
he says it. I'm sorry, I can't help but harp on this. But the guy who told Diamond that his dad was being humiliated up in the sky was so blasé about it. You see. Imagine if you could see that, if that was even possible. You see a man holding a drill to someone who you know to be your friend's father, and he just goes, Hey, dude, ain't that your dad?
Shirtless, screaming, being tortured.
And Dennis,
But
then
yeah,
what happens?
so what happens next is the father, just rife with shame, breaks free of the two oily men, and he's on the 50-foot floating castle. He jumps out the nearest window, and you hear and see just broken glass and him jumping and the nutsacks in the background, and he starts falling to the earth, and 5 gigantic blue beams of light shoot out of the castle in all directions and then converge on him, and he explodes in a giant bloody fireball.
As
Because
if him plummeting that far off the ground isn't going to kill him already.
Well, you know what it
They
was.
have to have the satisfaction of, no, we killed him.
Well, you know how in games where you can't just let the environment kill somebody, you got to make sure you get the last hit on them. That was what it was.
Is
You
that
know,
also like in the
that's
games
actually
where, like,
right.
if you have fire and you shoot someone with it, they don't set on fire or anything, it just hurts, and they go, "Oh, this hurts, I'm being burned!"
So yeah, and as you said earlier, Martin, this is during a flashback, and there's really no kind of clear indication of where the flashback starts or ends, so we just jump right back into the movie after the father blows up.
The segue is when he starts fighting the robots that start to come in, which we'll get into those fucking things later. But these robots that come in are fighting alongside the minions, who have the weirdest names. Again, have to go into that later. But they never say that the flashback ends, so I'm like, okay, this must be his first fight with Sigma. And no, suddenly all these bad guys just start dying. It's
Sigma
like,
are the bad guys, by the way.
I thought they were called question mark.
They are.
Yeah. No, but so we're introduced to some of the really bad, evil men cyborgs. I mean, the female cyborgs, the lead bad lady, but we're introduced to a couple of them, and when we first see them inside Castle Sigma, they're all set up almost like a high school quiz show. Like, they're all behind a table with microphones in front of them.
I was gonna say, I believe her official title is Lame Bitch Machine, as said by the
Yeah.
other guys.
so
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
this
yeah.
You know,
this comes,
that sounds really made up, guys. Just to clear something up. Lame bitch machine, that sounds made up, guys. I saw it with my own eyes. That's what it's fucking called. It's ridiculous.
so that brings up like a two-part question that I have. First of all, why does the villain think that his plan is anything but stupid? And also, why does this movie hate women so much?
This movie really hates women. A lot of dialogue talking about that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Because you can't have one without the other. The villains actually sit around just like, dumb women are dumb and everybody has to hate things. And the woman's just like, oh, yes. And it's like, but we're going to use them to take over the world.
And their strength is extremely modified to be way better than yours, so
But
now
remember,
they're better. What?
Since
Is
ceasing
this trying
being
not to be
human,
sexist, but also sexist?
remember though, but since ceasing being human, we've hated women. So,
So
Yep, no, they
robots just
explained
hate
it.
women.
yep.
Yeah. And the women hate themselves, too. That's kind of one of the tragic parts about it. If you ever think about this at a high level, Miss Borg, one of the main characters in this, is, like,
Such a
driven
tragic
to do
character.
horrible, violent things, clearly. And, like, so just goes along with when she's being punished. Like, she's seen multiple times in this movie on all fours getting hit, like, whipped with electric whips. It's just really strange.
And the guy who
It's
whips
not
her
very fun.
is Dr. Akinoyama or something like that, whatever his name is.
Yep.
And this is his show, and in order to help Miss Borg, his thoughts are, first of all, football, American football, would be great to incorporate with robots for some reason. And secondly, he's like, okay, let's see. I don't want to back away from this, women hate everything then thing. So, alright, I'm going to create 3 new robots to help Miss Borg, but they're going to try to kill her. Yeah, that makes sense. Let's rock.
Yep.
Well, remember, they were just there to make sure that she and her burgeoning love interest didn't interfere with the plans. So they were actually keeping
The
an
love
eye
interest,
on him.
of course, being Damon, of course.
Of course. Who could resist him?
By the way, can
Damn.
someone explain to me that sex scene?
Oh, yeah. Nobody.
I guess it was a sex scene, but it's
Dude, it
this-
doesn't need explaining. They fucked. In
With tentacles.
look. If it was just
robot
penis into
tentacle porn
vagina,
way.
I would understand. But this was not penis into vagina.
Wait, that the way they did it isn't how most people. Oh,
no.
Yeah.
Well, shit. Why don't you
I mean, I got
explain
into a
it?
tickle fight once.
Why don't you
Um,
tell our lovely audience, Mr. Moore, just how these two lovebirds in the cave decided to get it on?
They did it the perfectly natural way where they looked at each other, made weird faces, and then she shot her insides at him and had hoses and tubes and all sorts of things attacking him. It was like the reverse version of a tentacle fight.
There were titty whips hitting his face, and he loved it.
I said
I guess like
perfectly
father, like
natural.
son.
And she did say that she needed to touch him with her robot skin. And
Yep.
apparently that involved tentacles.
You do have to suspend your disbelief to a ridiculous degree for this movie, and I could get over that, but there were still parts that broke me. I had to break down and just be like, no, this was too stupid. What was it for you guys?
Oh, yeah.
I know there's something in there that just
Yeah.
broke you and made you say, no, this is just way too dumb for me.
What it was for me, and it's heartbreaking, because the second part of this movie, there's the first part where it's like the rise of the hero, and then the second part where the hero's robot and his love interest have both blown up. So it flashes forward 25 years, and he's the chauffeur to a minister that he doesn't like and all that. So there are some police officers who lose their jobs and their families, so they're down in the dumps just like he is, because he's lost
yeah.
everything. So they formed the League of Smiles. My favorite group in the whole movie, like, beats the Trump Zabogar and Daimon and everyone else, because they all have bright pink happy smile shirts, and they smile no matter what happens.
Yep.
But just getting back to what broke me about this, so with all these positive attitudes, there's one guy in a wheelchair, there's the leader of the group, and then a third guy who has a gigantic titty missile shot at him. And I say titty missile because it was shot out of a titty, and it was gigantic. He sees this coming, he throws his hands up, and rather than get out of the way, goes, even though I'm facing my impending death, I'll still smile about it, and just gets blown the F up by this missile. Just shot down an alley and kaboom.
By the way, in order to get to that missile, I think this is the part that must have broke me. It was right before that, where in order to get up to this like 50-story this 50-story woman robot who's the love child between Daiman and Miss Borg, they would need a rocket. They don't have a rocket. So what's the natural thing to do? Fart and light it.
Oh no! This was
Yep.
the lead up to that. This was their friend that died before they decided, hey, fart rocket's a good idea. Smile. Whee!
Oh shit, that's right,
what-
because then they suicide
Mm-hmm.
just ram a cell
Yeah.
phone.
Yep. But it worked. Although the cell phone was actually blowing people's heads up, so that's kind of good.
Yeah. That's exactly what I was getting to, is that's what broke me. There were two times in this movie where I don't like this movie anymore, and the second time was after the fart rocket into the cell phone.
Al-Qaeda would be very proud of them.
Mm.
So, Mr. Moore, I know there's something for you. What broke you?
Yes. So it didn't break me. It is one thing though that I just it was the breast milk scene in the beginning with the father. That one, like, I love the whole movie, but that one scene, I'm just like, why? God, why?
I remember writing down, I don't think they know anatomy. I really wanted to sit down with the director and say, yo, we need to have a talk. Let me take you through this exhibit at the museum, and I'll show you where babies come from.
And this was like a few scenes after he catches 2 bullets with his fucking fingers.
Yep.
And that still topped it. I even wrote it in caps. He fed us the milk of his breast.
Every time I hear that, it just hurts me, but
It
I
hurt.
can't
It
help
should
but
hurt
laugh.
you. I don't know why I put it in my notes, because it hurts me so much.
So, Paul, I know every part of this movie just made your brain hurt, but what was it that really did you in?
It wasn't so much a thing that happened in the movie. Like I said, the second part is the thing that ruined the whole thing for me. So I think the inconsistency of it all, the funny yet campy build up to, oh, there's going to be a second part. Maybe it's also going to be funny and campy. No, we have no more ideas. Here's a thing we threw together.
Oh, you mean
That's
like
it.
the insulin PSA?
Oh yeah, exactly.
But just remember, just because he had insulin doesn't mean he can't conquer.
No.
Yes, they needed to make that very clear.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah,
if
and
this
that was actually, yeah, the second I saw that insulin PSA, I was like, if I didn't have to do a fucking podcast, this is where I would turn it off.
Well, if it was your movie, what PSA would you put into it?
A PSA about no PSAs in movies.
Has your movie ever had a stupid PSA? Have you ever
No,
thought
The
about adding a
most
PSA to your
ironic
movie?
thing ever.
Do everyone a favor. Don't.
Have you ever loved the idea of pornography and Jurassic Park? Have you ever wanted to marry the two? Don't.
Yes. All right, I know Paul's answer to this, but what did you guys like better, part 1 or part 2?
It's kind of like Kill Bill Volume 1 and Volume 2,
Yeah.
and I know that, this
Perfect
movie
analogy.
There
overall
are
is...
so many better comparisons you could have made to this. I think this is more like,
Oh,
well, it's,
kinda-
sort of
that
like
kinda
comparing it to my morning shit versus my afternoon shit.
I'm just saying, what I mean to say is there was more action in the first one than the second part, so I like the first part better because of that.
Oh, what is there in the second part? Character development?
Not a
Yeah.
good
I mean, it is like I really do. I agree. It's hard. I can't choose between them. There's pros and cons to both sides. It's like the first one is very much actiony, but there's still character development. Obviously, the second one, you sort of get a bit of a payoff. I mean, yes, it's more ridiculous, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in a little bit. But like the whole fact that they're still kidnapping people after 25 years and nobody's doing anything about it. But because floating asshole, what are you gonna do? But
Zabogar isn't there. He's the one who saves us from floating asshole ball sack.
Yeah. With a super secret police.
Asshole.
But I don't know, I can't really pick one or the other.
All right, well, you mentioned the pros and cons. Why don't we just talk about the pros and cons to this movie? Because even if we didn't like it, there's got to be something great there. And even if you did like it, you know there's something bad that you really wish wasn't there. Why don't we start with the pros? Dennis.
The great thing about this movie, I mean, again, my favorite group in this is the League of Smiles, which is the three broken down policemen that just kind of prove no matter how bad things get, as long as you adopt a positive attitude, like kind of that's more important. And that's even after, again, 20 years of people being abducted forcibly against their will and being fed into an evil Japanese Terminator.
Evil Japanese
The
Terminator.
best part about that too is when they feed I got a tooth. Yes, I would expect that from a super secret, from a top scientist. The guy's just so disappointed. Like you could tell he's been doing it for 25 years and he still hasn't been able to build the robot.
Boy, you're remembering stuff I glazed over.
Well, Paul, what did you remember? Was there something to this that you just loved?
Oh boy.
It's gotta be something they did right.
I love the campiness. I'm a fan of campy. I don't know. It's too much for me. Some part, especially it's just the whole swing in a whole another direction. I wish they just continued a year later, and then you find out Miss Borg isn't dead or something. Just the child is dead or whatever. I don't know.
Well, just pick one thing. Pick one thing that you liked. Was it just like the overall campiness?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to say the campiness because the League of Smiles was hilarious.
All right, you know what? I'm gonna say 2 for League of Smiles.
Well, I mean, just the campiness of the entire thing. The kissy robot was funny too.
Fucking kissy robot.
See, just that silly bullshit is fucking hilarious.
Only in a Japanese movie are you gonna get a robot with giant, exaggerated lips that will suck the DNA out of you.
And I thought that's how they were gonna do that for the whole movie, but nope, dropped it.
No, just kidding, guys. Fucking with you.
But Mr. Moore, what was your favorite part? What was the biggest pro for this movie?
Oh, the biggest pro, you could tell they did not take this seriously. It shows through the entire movie. You know they didn't take it seriously because of all the camp and all the ridiculousness. And I just love that. Like, they went way over this is, if you look at it like a comedy, this is like a parody movie of that sort of genre of movie. And it's hilarious.
Which is funny because it's almost exactly like the original show, at least from the footage we saw in the trailer. So I'm wondering if it really was like deliberately campy, or if they were super serious and had to do it exactly like their favorite old show.
Well, the show itself could have been a parody too.
No, I think they knew damn well what they were doing on the show, and I just don't think it transfers well into a 2-hour fucking movie.
It'd be like Star Trek fans. They do one thing on the show, and then everyone just takes it super serial after that.
All right, so could we jump into the cons? I mean, I feel like Paul's dancing around it, but I got a huge one.
Absolutely, Dennis. Go right ahead.
Okay, so again, we've discussed that the second part of this is a 25-year jump into the future.
Ugh.
So this gigantic eyesore of a nutsack asshole butthole castle has been floating around terrorizing Japan. So that stands to reason, yeah, Zabogar's blown up, so that's why no one's stopping it. The
Yeah.
entire world has abandoned Japan. Like, no one has sent help. Not the United States, not England, not Australia, not anybody with, like, an organized, civilized army has offered any kind of aid. Like, Japan's in a bottle getting, like, ransacked by this horrible group.
Which could go after
So-
anyone else next.
Well, they did have a deal
Yeah.
with the prime minister, though.
And what a deal it was.
Oh yeah.
I thought it took over the world, personally. I was like, any military will be destroyed, or all your planes and all your ships will be blown up. But if Zabogar were to be here... By the way-
Zabogar's a robot on foot. He's not.
I really can't... I need to say this. This is the ultimate thing that I hated about this movie. Here's a big old fucking con. Sorry, is it my turn for cons?
Sure,
ahead.
why not?
All right. This movie shouldn't have continued after fucking Damon got stabbed in the head. He got stabbed in the fucking head with
Yeah.
a spike. He should be dead.
He did,
Why is
right
he
in the,
not dead?
right
Realism
in
is
the
not
eyes.
this movie.
He's not
He
a
just looked kind of
robot.
like sad too. He was just like, "Oh, you stabbed me. Why? That's not very nice."
Because I love you or some bullshit. I don't know.
That was right before the titty whipping, right?
Yes, well,
That's
that
exactly what it
turned her
was.
on because
Oh my
See,
goodness.
I have to
And-
say one of the biggest cons is even though Zabogar turned into a motorcycle, you'd think they'd have exciting motorcycle chases, and they just put the most boring fucking chases. No one knew
Oh.
how to ride a bike. They were going like maybe 15, 20 miles an hour on a straight road and trying to make it seem exciting. Yeah.
Why did it make Star Trek phaser sounds? I don't get it.
Oh, see, it only made Star Trek phaser sounds if it was Zabogar. If it was the female robot that could turn into a motorcycle, Black Hawk, it made a custard sound like...
Poink! Whenever it transformed, it was
Yeah,
so dumb.
It was disgusting.
Not only was
What
that
I didn't
gross,
get
but
it. Was it supposed to be gross or something? Was that robot a yucky robot or oily?
it just goes back to like them
wore-
hating women.
That robot that just had no human features to it at all. It was called Black Hawk. It had a bird head. Was wearing a furry white black polka dotted thong.
which she showed
That's
off
hot.
to Zabogar, and he actually blushed.
This movie has a lot of questions about how people have sex with each other. How the hell
she
is he
called him a
going to
pervert.
get it on with her? Go gadget robo dick. I don't know.
His detachable ears.
I mean, he's got a helicopter that comes out of his head. He's got a car that comes out of his feet. And yet, even with that, I'm still not convinced he has a dick.
Don't forget that tongue of his. That rapid fire tongue.
I mean, the
That's
gun
it.
in his mouth.
And that is
I
my
bet she
biggest
loves that
con.
one.
Oh.
That's the one. That every single fight in this movie is bookended by Zabogar shooting a Gatling gun out of his mouth, and that always wins the fight. Why doesn't he use that at the start of every fight?
Why
Gives
not? Because everyone's already shooting their guns at whoever the bad guy is, and it does nothing. But they keep going, because it might do something eventually. Maybe if they reload 6 or 7 more times, maybe they'll get like a fucking bruise on their pinky.
Didn't Zabogar die too?
Yeah.
Yep.
He fucking
But
fell
how did he
over and
come
just
back?
exploded.
Why did he come back exactly the same?
Someone
Sigma
else looked for the
rebuilt him.
pieces.
But he.
Yeah.
Yeah, if Diamond took 10 minutes to just pick up Zabogar and put him back together, there wouldn't be that much of a problem.
Then
But
why
he
didn't it
did
work
it.
for Miss Borg?
Because all of her was put into that yellow glowing placenta rock that Sigma abducted, so you couldn't
I think that
put
was
her
her
together.
cyber
'Cause-
womb.
Of course. Why didn't
was-
I kill myself in the middle of this movie?
And with that, why don't we go on to our final thoughts? Mr. Moore, what do you want to say about this movie to whoever's listening to this?
But there's so much to we didn't cover. I mean, I know it's
There's
taking a
too
long-
much to cover.
Like the
There's way-
wheelchair Zabogar when he gets really old because he's still fighting righteousness, or the fact that they're fighting on her tits, the giant robotic tits.
I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure we
that-
got robot tits.
What
I'm
about
pretty
the
sure that's incest. That's
Yeah,
his fucking
probably.
daughter.
what about the fact that they had twins? Friggin' fighting each other on the tits.
I don't
Shit,
want that.
you okay?
that.
Shut up. Like,
Fuck his dumb fucking son, who's just an angry cunt. Fuck him. I hate him forever.
Well, then,
I mean,
that, Paul.
this, this movie is worth giving a chance. The action picks up at the towards the end, just like you would expect, and the act one is of course crazy. I mean, the whole thing is crazy, but it's worth checking out.
So, Paul, what are your final thoughts on this?
Don't be disappointed. Watch only the first half.
And
And turn it off and burn it.
Wonderful. I'm just gonna go on to Dennis now.
I have a man that everyone should meet, and they should meet through this movie, and his name is Mr. Africa. And he goes to prove that if you're born a Japanese man, you can throw on a dashiki and just replace your eyes with ping pong balls and live your dream of developing a power to have slow-moving orange corkscrews shoot out of your eyeballs
They're
and
eye
stab
works, aren't
someone
they?
else in the eyes.
God damn it.
And you get to hang out with cool people like Baron Von Eyepatch.
All right, guys. Well, thank you for watching this movie with me.
Well,
This has
it's
been
been a-
it's been a hell of a ride.
Great
it's
movie.
been something.
And for the next show, of course, I've got another one picked out. Are you guys ready to guess what it is? Because
Sure.
in front of me,
Mhm.
I have 3 descriptions. One of which is an actual movie. The other 2 are not. And just to throw everyone off, they're all comedies. So the next episode is going to be a comedy.
Oh boy. Do you have air quotes going there?
Is it?
Yeah, you can't see it, but my fingers are practically breaking off with the quotes that are just happening right now. All right. So you guys ready for this shit?
Yeah.
All right. Number 1. Studley Jared, Nerdy Griff, Flamboyant Nico, and Innocent Andy all want the same thing, to lose their virginity, and they'll paint the town lavender to do so in this gay take on the teen comedy genre that's filled with naughty gags aplenty. Number 2. Nico, a homeless alcoholic clown, learns to laugh again when he befriends a disabled boy and heads on a road trip in this darkly funny 1968 French film. Number 3. Stuck up and prudish, Jerry only knows one thing: business. When his son Michael buys the shipping company Jerry works for and turns it into a sex toy manufacturer, he'll have to loosen up with his zipper down or else be replaced by one of the many double D's working under him. So guys, 1, 2, or 3, and we'll start with Dennis.
I feel like the clue in number 1 that it shouldn't be real is the alliteration of all the names, but the other ones I just don't trust, so I gotta say number 1.
You're saying number 1 is the real one?
Yep.
All right. Paul.
So, number 1 and number 3 they sound a lot like they could be real. Number 2 definitely sounds like you fucking made it up. And damn, I feel like I might have even heard of number 1. I'm gonna go with number 1.
All right, and Mr. Moore.
All right. I'm thinking because they both went for number 1, and my gut says I should go for number 3 because I really don't want that movie to exist. I'm gonna guess 3.
All right, so nobody thinks that number 2 is a real movie.
I just
No.
don't.
I think you wrote number 2.
Sounds like something you made up.
That definitely is something I made up.
Yeah.
And I
Yes.
wish that was real because I would totally watch that movie.
You're the only person who would.
So, Mr. Moore, I got some news for you.
Yes.
You are wrong.
Oh no.
Number
Good.
1 is the real movie and it's called Another Gay Movie.
Oh.
So, Paul,
Sounds
you
pretty gay.
So, Paul, you want to back out of the last one, which I don't want to mention because that is going to be the next pick after this one. You still want to be on board with this one?
I feel like I might.
Oh, I can tell you, I am excited is not the word. Neither are most
I
things.
thought you were said.
Well, I'm rock hard.
All right, guys. Well, once again, thank you very much for joining me. If anyone wants to try to contact me, eventually I'll get this shit up on like a real website or create a Facebook or something. But for now, If you're watching and you want to contact me, just somejerkfromboston@gmail.com. We'll read whatever it is on the show. And until next time, go fuck yourself.